Picture this. You're a part of an advanced galactic civilization, and suddenly the most terrifying force in the universe shows up at your doorstep. The Zephyrians, these crystalline beings who've been part of the Galactic Council for millennia, were watching their entire species get wiped out by something called the Devourers. Think space locusts, but each one is the size of a battleship, and they literally eat planets. Now, the Zephyrians weren't some primitive species. These guys have been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. Their cities were works of art, floating crystal spires that caught starlight and turned it into pure energy. They had technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level, ships that could fold space like origami, and minds that could communicate across vast distances without any devices at all. But none of that mattered when the Devourers showed up. The first attack came without warning. The outer mining colonies just vanished. One day they were there, sending regular reports about rare metal extraction. The next day, there was nothing but empty space and a strange, pulsing biomass where 3 entire moons used to be. The Zephyrians sent scout ships to investigate, and that's when they got their first real look at their new nightmare. The Devourers weren't like anything in the galactic database. They weren't a species in the traditional sense. They were more like a force of nature that happened to be alive. Each creature was a perfect killing machine, part organic, part mechanical, all hunger. They consumed everything, rock, metal, organic matter, even energy itself. And worse, every planet they devoured made them stronger, bigger, more numerous. The Zephyrian military tried to fight back. They're crystal warriors, beings who could manipulate light itself as a weapon, do everything they had at the swarm. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, gravity bombs that could crush mountains, even their ultimate weapon, the Star Lance, which could channel the power of their sun into a focused beam of pure destruction. It wasn't enough. The Devourers adapted to every attack, evolved past every defense. For every creature the Zephyrians destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. Within weeks, half their system was gone. That's when High Counselor Zelnoff made a decision that would change everything. They activated the emergency beacon, a device that hadn't been used in over 3,000 years. The beacon sent out a distress signal across the entire galaxy, reaching every known civilization with a single desperate message. We are dying. Please help. For 72 days, that beacon screamed across the void. Every single advanced species in the galaxy received the call. The proud Altarians, with their massive fleets of bioships, heard it and decided they had more pressing matters to attend to. The Centauri Federation, masters of AI warfare, ran their calculations and determined that helping the Zephyrians would be strategically inadvisable. The Vegan Empire, the Sirius Collective, the Ring Builders of Proxima, all of them got the message, and all of them chose to stay away. And honestly, you couldn't blame them. The Devourers have been the galaxy's boogeyman for centuries. Ancient texts spoke of them wiping out entire sectors, consuming civilization so thoroughly that not even ruins remained to mark their passage. Most species considered them a myth, a cautionary tale told to young ones about the dangers lurking in the dark between stars. But the Zephyrians knew better now. The myths were real, and they were next. By day 70, the Zephyrian homeworld was preparing for the end. Families huddled together in the deep crystal caverns, sharing their last moments of light song, their beautiful way of saying goodbye through harmonic resonance. Children who had never known fear were learning what it meant to watch the sky and wait for death to fall from it. Then something impossible happened. Ships started appearing at the edge of the system, not the sleek, organic vessels of the Altarians or the geometric perfection of Centauri craft. These were crude, boxy things that looked like they'd been hammered together in some backwater industrial facility. They were made of simple metal and ceramic, held together with welds and rivets like something out of a museum. When the newcomers made contact, their message was brief and matter-of-fact. This is Captain Jake Morrison of a United Earth ship Indomitable. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Earth? The Zephyrians checked every database, every stellar catalog they had. Nothing. These humans claimed to be from a world that didn't officially exist, flying ships that looked like antiques, offering help that no one else was willing to give. But when you're watching your entire species face extinction, You don't ask too many questions about your potential saviors. You just hope they know what they're doing. The humans were about to show them exactly what Deathworlders were capable of. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge watching the tactical displays, and his crew was doing something the Zephyrians had never seen before, treating the galaxy's worst nightmare like it was just another day at the office. The bridge of the indomitable Buzz with quiet efficiency. No panic. No dramatic speeches about saving the galaxy. Just professional soldiers doing what they'd trained for their entire lives. Devourer Swarm Bearing 270. Distance 4,000 clicks, called out Lieutenant Amy Walsh from Sensors, her voice carrying the same tone you'd use to report traffic conditions. Roger that. Weapons free. Let's clean house. Morrison replied like he was asking someone to take out the trash. What happened next would be talked about in Zephyrian military academies for generations. The human fleet didn't form some elaborate battle formation or attempt to negotiate. They didn't even seem particularly impressed by the massive bioships approaching them. Instead, they did something that had never occurred to any galactic species. They treated the Devourers like a problem to be solved rather than a force to be feared. The first volley from the human ships was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While most civilizations had moved on to exotic energy weapons and reality-bending technology, humans had perfected something far more basic. Throwing things really, really hard. Their kinetic cannons launched tungsten slugs at significant fractions of light speed, turning each projectile into a miniature meteor that punched through Devourer bioarmor like it was paper. Direct hit on the lead bioship, reported Ensign Pete Davis from Weapons Control. That one's not getting back up. Good shooting. Amy, what's our count looking like? Sensors show approximately 200 contacts, but they're bunching up. Perfect for the party favors. The party favors turned out to be fusion missiles, not the clean, precise weapons that other species use, but crude, powerful explosives that turn entire swarm clusters into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The humans had apparently decided that if you can't be elegant, you might as well be thorough. But here's what really shocked the Zephyrians. The humans weren't just winning, they were making it look easy. While monitoring the human communications, the crystalline observers heard conversations that would haunt their dreams. "Hey, Morrison, remember that training exercise on Titan?" Called out Commander Beth Rodriguez from the secondary bridge. "The one with the mining drones gone haywire?" "Yeah, this is way easier. At least these things are trying to fight back in a straight line." The casual comparison of galaxy-ending monstrosities to a training accident was the kind of thing that made advanced alien civilizations question everything they thought they knew about the universe. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their unique approach to problem-solving. When the Devourers adapted to kinetic rounds, their bio-armor growing thicker, their formation spreading out, the humans simply switched tactics. Instead of exotic countermeasures, they pulled out something they called tungsten rain. Thousands of tiny projectiles scattered from their ships like deadly confetti. Each one too small for the Devourers to track, but collectively devastating to anything caught in the spread. "It's like hunting ducks," Morrison observed, watching the tactical display as Devourer biofighters got shredded by the metallic storm. Except the ducks are the size of skyscrapers and want to eat planets. The Zephyrian military observers were frantically taking notes, try to understand how these primitive-looking humans were accomplishing what their most advanced weapons couldn't. The answer, they were beginning to realize, wasn't the technology, it was in the mindset. While every galactic species approached the Devourers as an existential threat, something to be feared and avoided, humans saw them as what they'd always been best at handling, a pest problem that had gotten out of hand. They brought the same methodical approach they'd used to deal with everything from invasive insects to rogue asteroids back home. "Ammunition status?" Morrison asked. "Still plenty in the tubes, Captain. These things aren't nearly as tough as the briefings made them sound," replied Walsh. That comment would later be included in official Zephyrian historical records as the moment they realized they'd been thinking about the Devourers all wrong. To species that had evolved in relatively peaceful environments, the bioships represented ultimate predators. To humans who clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain, they were just another aggressive species that needed to be managed. The first battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. 18 minutes to do what no galactic species had managed in decades. actually hurt the Devourers badly enough to make them retreat. As the surviving bioships fled deeper into the system, the human fleet maintained their casual professionalism. Well, that was fun, Morrison announced to his crew. Let's pursue and finish the job. And someone get me a coffee. It's going to be a long day. The Zephyrians watched in absolute shock as these humans carved through the swarm, chatting about ammunition counts and optimal firing solutions like they were discussing weekend plans. They just witnessed the impossible, and the humans acted like they'd done nothing more remarkable than taking out the garbage. The galaxy's most feared predators had just met Earth's most successful ones, and it wasn't even close. Here's where it gets really wild. While the Zephyrians were hiding in underground bunkers, human soldiers were literally walking around on the surface in basic environmental suits. Think about that for a second. The surface of the Zephyrian homeworld had become a toxic wasteland where the air itself could dissolve most known materials, and these humans were strolling through it like they were on a weekend camping trip. Sergeant Tom Bradley led his squad through what used to be a Zephyrian city, but now looked like something out of humanity's worst nightmares. The beautiful crystal spires had been twisted into grotesque organic formations, pulsing with an alien rhythm that made most galactic species physically ill just to look at. The ground was covered in a thick, acidic slime that ate through standard military equipment in minutes. The very atmosphere was a cocktail of toxic gases that would kill most breathing creatures in seconds. Contact left, about 50 meters, called Private Kate Stevens, shouldering her rifle like she was hunting deer instead of galaxy-ending monstrosities. Copy that. Remember, people, acid burns, so don't get fancy. Bradley responded with the tone of a coach reminding his team about basic safety rules. The Zephyrian military observer, watching through a protected drone, couldn't believe what he was seeing. These humans were operating in an environment that required their most advanced hazmat technology just to survive, and they were doing it in what looked like basic work clothes with breathing masks. When he mentioned this to his superiors, they assumed the translation software was malfunctioning. But the humans weren't just surviving in this hellscape. They were thriving. When Private Danny Walsh encountered a section of the city that had been completely transformed into living biomass, blocking their path forward, he didn't retreat or call for heavy equipment. Instead, he studied the acidic secretions pooling around organic barriers and had an idea that would never occur to any civilized species. Sarge, this stuff's eating through everything, right? What if we use it to eat through what we need it to eat through? Bradley looked at the plan Walsh was sketching the dirt and nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Set up a collection system, and let's redirect this mess. Within 20 minutes, the human squad had jury-rigged a system to collect the Devourer acid and use it as a demolition tool. They carved their own path through the transformed cityscape, turned the enemy's defensive advantages into their own weapons. The Zephyrian observer had to replay the recording 3 times before he could convince himself it was real. These humans were doing things that should have been impossible, using the Devourer's own acid to melt through obstacles, turning the creature's bioelectric systems against them, and showing a level of comfort with improvised solutions that suggested this was, quite literally, just another Tuesday for them. When they encountered actual Devourers, the smaller ground-based creatures that were only the size of large vehicles, the humans displayed something that chilled the Zephyrian observers more than the monsters themselves. Complete professional calm. There was no fear, no hesitation, just efficient teamwork that spoke of extensive experience with dangerous situations. Stevens, high left. Walsh, take the low angle. I've got the big ugly in the middle. Bradley called out, coordinating his team like they were moving furniture instead of dealing with creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. The engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. The Devourers, evolved to face prey that panicked or fled, found themselves against predators who analyzed weak points, coordinated attacks, and adapted tactics in real time. When it was over, the humans were already moving on to their next objective, discussing ammunition usage and optimal positioning like it was a routine training exercise. But what really blew the Zephyrian minds was a human attitude toward the environment itself. When Counselor Ethmar managed to establish direct communication with the squad, his first question was about their remarkable environmental resistance. How do you function in such conditions? Our best analysis suggests this atmosphere should be lethal to any organic life form. Bradley paused in his equipment check and actually chuckled. This Nah, this is pretty mild. You should see the sulfur mines back home, or the processing plants on Europa. At least here the air is not trying to freeze and poison you at the same time. When the Zephyrian observer asked for clarification, Private Stevens jumped in. The Sarge spent 2 years working the volcanic vents on Io before he joined the military. Said the heat made him appreciate nice, cool environments like this. The revelation that humans regularly worked in conditions that would kill most galactic species for entertainment was a kind of information that required updating several textbooks. But Bradley wasn't finished sharing his perspective on their current mission. Honestly, this reminded me of a cleanup operation we did on Luna a few years back. Mining equipment went haywire, created a real mess. Took us 3 weeks to sort out, he said, casually reloading his weapon. Of course, that was just machines. This is better. At least these things fight back in predictable patterns. When the Zephyrian observer asked how they could function in such a toxic hellscape, Bradley just shrugged and said it reminded him of a mining operation on Luna, just with more teeth. That comment would later become the title of a best-selling Zephyrian book about human psychology. Just another Tuesday. Understanding Death World Mentality. The humans had turned nightmare into routine, and they made it look easy. After the Devourers started retreating, something that had never happened before in recorded galactic history, Admiral Lisa Parker sat down with the Council representatives and dropped some knowledge that changed everything. The meeting took place aboard the Zephyrian flagship, in a crystalline conference room that had been hastily cleared of debris from the recent battles. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered, all of them trying to process what they had just witnessed. "We've been listening to your radio chatter for about 40 years now," Admiral Parker said casually, settling into a chair that wasn't designed for human anatomy. "Decided to stay quiet because, well, most of you seem pretty fragile, and we didn't want to cause a panic." The silence that followed was the kind you get when someone drops a bombshell so big that everyone's brain needs a moment to reboot. High Counselor Zelnoff was the first to recover, his crystalline form flickering with confused patterns of light. "You've been watching us for 4 decades, and you never thought to introduce yourselves?" Parker shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both apology and complete lack of concern. "We tried making contact once, about 30 years back. Sent a simple greeting to the Altarian Republic. Their response was to immediately mobilize their entire fleet and start scanning for invasion forces. We figured maybe it was better to keep our distance." What the Admiral didn't mention, but what her aide whispered to a Zephyrian diplomat later, was that the simple greeting had been transmitted from a human deep space monitoring station that was, according to human standards, lightly armed. According to galactic standards, it carried enough firepower to level a small moon. The Altarians had detected the weapon signatures and assumed they were facing a Dreadnought-class warship. "But the real issue," Parker continued, "wasn't that you seemed jumpy. It was that you all seemed so delicate." The word hung in the air like a challenge. These were representatives of species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, created artificial intelligences, and built structures that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Delicate wasn't exactly how they saw themselves. Counselor Vexhai of the Centauri Federation, a being whose species had conquered death itself through consciousness transfer technology, leaned forward. "Delicate? We are among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy." "Oh, absolutely," Parker agreed. "Your tech is incredible, but your people, well, let me put it this way. Our preliminary observations suggested that most of your species would have trouble surviving a weekend camping trip on Earth." Then came the kicker. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was what galactic xenobiologists would classify as a Class 12 death world. Everything that was trying to kill everything else, all the time. Humans had evolved in an environment so hostile that they considered armed warfare relatively relaxing compared to their natural habitat. The explanation that followed would become required reading in every xenobiology program in the galaxy. Earth, as Parker described it, was a planet where the weather could kill you, the plants could kill you, the animals definitely want to kill you, and even some of the rocks were dangerous. Hurricanes that could flatten cities were considered mild weather. Earthquakes that could reshape continents happened regularly. The planet was home to creatures that could crush vehicles with their jaws, inject enough poison to kill 100 beings, or simply swallow prey whole. Our children, Parker explained, learn to identify venomous animals before they learn to walk. We teach them which plants will kill them if they touch the leaves. A standard safety briefing for a human camping trip includes protocols for encounters with creatures that could take apart one of your vehicles with their bare claws. The alien representatives sat in stunned silence as Parker continued. Humans had evolved not just to survive in this environment, but to thrive in it. They'd become so good at dealing with deadly threats that they'd actually run out of natural predators on their home planet. When they'd moved out into space, they brought that same problem-solving approach with them. The thing is, Parker said, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's ecosystem, when you grow up in an environment where everything is trying to kill you, you develop a very practical approach to danger. You learn to assess threats quickly, adapt to changing situations, and work together to overcome problems that seem impossible. The Devourers, the terror of the galaxy, to humans, they were just another invasive species that needed managing. Parker showed them comparative threat assessments that made the council representatives question everything they thought they knew about danger. According to human standards, the Devourers rank somewhere between concerning pest problem and moderately challenging wildlife management issue. Back home, we have insects that can strip flesh from bone in minutes, weather systems that can freeze you solid in seconds, and natural disasters that make your worst-case scenarios look like minor inconveniences, Parker explained. The Devourers are definitely dangerous, but they're not creative. They don't adapt their tactics. They don't use psychological warfare, and they certainly don't have the survival instincts of something like, say, a Terran honey badger. The comparison between galaxy-ending bioweapons and Earth animals will become a running theme in human-alien diplomatic relations. It also explained why humans had responded to the Zephyrian distress call with such casual confidence. Look, Parker concluded, we've been dealing with hostile environments and dangerous creatures our entire evolutionary history. This is what we do. It's what we're good at. And honestly, it felt good to help. The galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet left as quietly as it had arrived, but the galaxy was never the same. They left behind communication protocols and a simple message that sent chills down every alien spine. Earth had been watching, and now the galaxy was under their protection whether it wanted to be or not. The departure itself was typically human. No grand ceremonies, no demands for payment or political concessions, no victory parades. Admiral Parker simply informed the Council that the immediate threat had been neutralized, handed over a data package containing human contact information, and mentioned that Earth would keep an ear out for any future problems. Then the ships vanished into hyperspace as efficiently as they'd arrived, leaving behind a galaxy trying to process what had just happened. The communication protocols they left were simple but revolutionary. Unlike the complex diplomatic channels that typically took years to establish between species, the humans had provided direct emergency frequencies that would reach Earth within hours. The message was clear. If you're in trouble, call us. No bureaucracy, no committees, no lengthy negotiations about territorial agreements or trade disputes. Just pick up the phone and ask for help. But it was the implications of that offer that really shook the galactic community. Within weeks of the human departure, intelligence agencies across known space were frantically trying to piece together just how long Earth had been watching them. The humans had mentioned 40 years of monitoring, but careful analysis of their technology and their casual familiarity with galactic affairs suggested they'd been observers much longer than that. The Altarian Republic discovered that several unexplained phenomena in their outer systems over the past century could now be attributed to human observation posts. The Centauri Federation found subtle evidence of their communications being monitored during conflicts they'd assumed were completely secret. Most disturbing of all, the Vegan Empire realized that their most classified military exercises had been watched by beings they'd never even known existed. The Zephyrians survived, obviously, but more importantly, everyone now knew there were others out there in the dark. Watchers who'd chosen to stay hidden not because they were afraid, but because they were worried about scaring their neighbors. This revelation fundamentally changed how every species viewed their place in the universe. Before the human intervention, Galactic civilization had operated under the assumption that they knew all the major players. The Council represented the peak of known technological and military capability. Threats like the Devourers were considered forces of nature, dangerous but rare, like cosmic storms or collapsing stars. The idea that there might be other civilizations more advanced and more dangerous than anything they'd encountered had never seriously been considered. Now they knew better. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness between stars were beings who had mastered violence to such a degree that galaxy-ending threats were considered minor inconveniences. And these beings had apparently been watching over galactic civilization like protective older siblings, intervening only when absolutely necessary. The psychological impact was enormous. Species that had considered themselves apex predators suddenly realized they were children playing a sandbox while adults watched from nearby. The Altarians, who had dominated local space for millennia through military superiority, discovered that their most powerful weapons were considered cute by human standards. The Centauri Federation's reality-bending technology was apparently less impressive than what humans use for construction projects. Educational systems across the galaxy had to be completely revised. Zephyrian schools began teaching courses on Deathworld ecology and survival psychology, trying to help their children understand how beings could evolve in environments that would kill most galactic citizens instantly. The concept of a Class 12 death world became common knowledge, along with the sobering realization that Earth was apparently on the mild end of that classification scale. As Zephyrian kids would learn in school for generations afterward, sometimes the most dangerous predators also make the best guardians. Their textbooks included detailed studies of human intervention strategies, showing how a species that had evolved to handle constant existential threats could respond to galactic crises with remarkable efficiency and calm. The emergency beacon had called into the void for salvation, and from the shadows of space, Deathworlders had answered with the casual competence of people who turned survival into an art form. But the really revolutionary part wasn't the rescue itself. It was the promise that came with it. Humans hadn't just solved the Devourer problem and left. They'd essentially adopted the galaxy, taking on the role of protector, whether anyone had asked for it or not. The communication protocols weren't just emergency contacts. They were a guarantee that somewhere out there, beings who could handle anything the universe threw at them were keeping watch. Trade routes that had been considered too dangerous were suddenly viable again. Exploration missions to previously off-limit systems were approved with the understanding that backup was available if needed. The entire galactic economy shifted as species realized they were no longer alone in the dark. The galaxy had cried for help, and the humans had simply said, "Yeah, we got this." But more than that, they'd said it with the confidence of beings who had never encountered a problem they couldn't solve, and the casual tone of people who would always be there when needed. The universe had new management, and everyone was starting to realize that might be exactly what it had always needed.